what can you do when HE modeling if the disease area is so rare that no relevant data exists for it outside of the trial?
No, I think that's well expressed, probably, actually, Rob. I mean, in essence, of course, we're talking about the sort of the early terms nightmare situation where we are looking at a completely de novo build requirement and quite a lot of well evidence-founded flexibility with respect to the data we source and the assumptions we attach to that. I think with respect to where we'd start there, we'd consider that, well, I mean, I've touched on this, I suppose, briefly already, but essentially the answer to our questions in that respect would be proxy diseases in most cases. If we can find absolutely no precedent, and for that, I should say, by the way, if we're conscious that there is no precedent, our SLR is absolutely going to have to confirm that. That previous economic analyses in this space, we have to be absolutely certain that there is no benefit, no HTA submission that has been recently, and I mean probably within the last 15 years, submitted, critiqued, criticized, recommendations issued implicitly or explicitly, and can be learned from. Now, if our SLR turns up absolutely an answer that there is nothing, then proxy diseases are going to be essentially coming to our rescue, and indeed, in many cases, in most cases, HTA bodies will recognize that as long as our review reports can best articulate that paucity of precedent. Now, with proxy diseases, what we can typically look to inform are a couple of things. Mainly, the quality of life data tends to be rather better suited across diseases. If we're talking about similar comorbidities and adverse events occurring, etc., than you might find cost. And also rare diseases, within rare diseases, proxy diseases may actually also start to help us to somewhat inform the disease health states or characterizations of the disease pathway that we want to consider, as well as the order in which these disease health states function, so essentially the disease and treatment pathway. We'd look to supplement that with really quite fresh and extensive and broad-reaching conversations with our key clinical experts within the disease area. Probably start with suggestions to them that these proxy diseases say this, we therefore infer that this is likely to be the case, and look to have a discussion, a productive discussion around the applicability of some of these assumptions to this space and perhaps what cannot be applied, and start to get a more succinct idea of exactly what characterizes this disease relative to the surrogates we're thinking about, the proxies. And of course, any proxy disease information we look to leverage is therefore going to be extensively validated by KOLs and indeed patient groups if possible. Now, of course, this is all encouraged, particularly if HTA bodies have previously evidenced a desire or an openness to accepting proxy disease information. And so that should encourage us, should that be found. I think with cost, what I'd probably state is that whilst one could consider or try to infer costs from proxy disease health states, for example, and take that into our disease area, we'd have to be very careful to consider exactly what's going on in those proxy disease health states with respect to process, with respect to where patients are, what can happen to them, etc., what is being given to them. We have to be sure, again, with clinical conversations and validation, that what's happening in our disease area actually entails the same circumstances for our patients, that the same resource is being given to these patients, that they are experiencing similar events, an order of events, for example. And so once we've validated that, what we're doing in that respect, therefore, is essentially sort of jumping into something of a micro-costing accountancy style of cost build. That's quite conventional within rare diseases, rare disease modeling. I think it's probably lastly worth pointing out again that, I mean, existing precedent in the literature and trials may be rare now, and we can look to leverage as much as we can from proxy diseases and straight from clinicians. But real-world evidence has a major role in that respect for ultimately, for now, building a model that does its best leveraging cross-disease examples, but actually in future strives to have disease-specific examples drawn from real-world evidence with conventional caveats that HTA bodies require in terms of treating and attaching assumptions around that data.